Given that it's the first time this particular public body has had a meeting, I suppose we can do the call to order. Out of the membership, I'd suggest that you elect a president and vice president, and then we can move on with the agenda.
I'll make a motion that our Honorable Jay Larson be the chairman so he doesn't have to change seats. Second.
Do I hear a motion for nomination cease and a unanimous ballot be cast? Moved and seconded that a unanimous, that motions be made to nomination cease and a unanimous ballot be cast. Discussion on that motion. Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Vice Chairman.
I would like to nominate Doug Maloney, Vice Chairman. Second.
Hearing no further nominations, I assume we're ready for a motion to nomination cease and a unanimous ballot be cast.
Second.
Moved and seconded on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And a unanimous ballot is cast. Now it's time, I think, that we need to introduce ourselves to everybody so we know who we are. I'm Jay Larson. I've been on the City Planning Commission for a long time.
Larry Gersa, local architect, been on the planning commission for about 3 years now. Doug Malumbi, been on planning for, I don't remember how many years.
Not quite as many as me, but
No,
quite a few.
no, you've got the record. Joe Slingett, been on
As long as this board's been around?
well, it's back when Brett Brewer was on the council yet, so.
Okay. Next.
Oh, me, Pat Kinder. I'm here to bother you folks. I've got
Okay.
a couple of clients.
Okay.
Attorney
And
from here in Mitchell. And this is my son Reed. He's a first-year law student who's just finished and barely passed, but he's shadowing me.
And you, sir?
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Curtis Bowlington. I'm
One of the
owner
people.
Nuisance property.
Okay.
Wade London, code enforcement officer for the city of Mitchell.
Okay.
Kyle Croce, public works director.
And Justin Johnson, city attorney.
All right. Thank you. We have an agenda before us.
Oh, you didn't notify those folks on the other people.
Oh, yes. Okay, we have people on speakerphone too, please. Tell us who you are and where we're at here.
Hi, I'm Glenn Davis. We're actually in Ohio at the moment, and this is my wife, Kay. Say hi.
Hi, this is Kay Davis. We own property 39 South Armin.
Okay? Thank you. First item on the agenda is for citizens to approve it. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded that the agenda be approved. Discussion. Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Citizens input, we usually wait on that till the end of the agenda, but it's on the agenda here, so we will, if you need to address this board on any item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium and state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken. All right, as I see no one coming forward, the next item on the agenda is A hearing and action in relation to Kay Davis. Tell us about what Kay Davis's problems are.
Pat, did you want to start, or do you want me to have Wade go through things? What's your preference?
Well, I think the preference here is that Glenn and Kay, I'm going to basically let them know that what your position is, and then if you want to add something, you can certainly do that. But it's my understanding that you're not really disputing the fact that there are some things that need to be taken care of at the property, and you're aware of many of those. You want clarification as to exactly which areas you're looking at, and you have a person here in town who does some of that work for you, and in fact has already done a good chunk of it and is willing to do some more. And just so that Mr. London's aware and the city attorney, there are some piles of wood that were taken down last year that Mr. Gaston has agreed to remove tonight. I believe that he's done some of the mowing and some of those things to get into compliance. There are some issues with us not knowing which garage door is being singled out to be fixed, and there's already a plan to have the house re-sided or finished to be re-sided, and then any painting that needs to be done. But as I indicated in the appeal letter, Davises live in Ohio. They are in that age group as just about everybody here is. That doesn't make it safe to travel, and they're asking simply that they be allowed to communicate directly with Mr. London or through Mr. Gaston to make arrangements and a plan to, number one, figure out what it is that the complaint is as to specific trees or garage doors or painted areas, so that those can be remedied or the issues narrowed and be reconsidered at a later time.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
I think you pretty well described it.
Yeah, the concern also I had was 14 days to complete either painting or siding is very ambitious. We're also out and, we would like to get there in order to get that done. You're right, we're in that age group. I graduated with Doug, so.
So that's
all I have.
That's what we're requesting is simply some time to place Mr. London in contact with Mr. Gaston and possibly the Davises to come up with a solution to exactly identifying what it is and see what's left to do, because I'm indicating that a good chunk of this has already been accomplished or is in the process of being done.
Wade, talk to us.
Okay.
Talk to us, please.
Well, on May 11th, actually, we got a complaint. This complaint generated by an individual. So on May 11th, 2020, I went out to the property, took a couple pictures. Some overgrown vegetation in the front, some dead vegetation laying in the side. Yard was overgrown. Went on the neighbors to the east and took a couple pictures of the back there. It looked to me as if the deck was in poor shape, needs a lot of attention. The paint on the side of the house is starting to peel on the east side of the house. And in the back, there's a bunch of dead trees and dead trees laying on the ground. I drove by there right before I came to the meeting here. He has removed the dead vegetation in the front and the overgrown vegetation in front of the house. That has been removed. But as far as the house itself with the painting, it's still chipping paint. The patio still looks like in poor condition. So the complaint that came in, they were more worried about the way the outside looked, and then rodents being a problem too. And then you'll see on the left there, the garage door is boarded up. The left garage door is. Looks like the right one is still maybe operable. but the left one is just looks like a big little piece of plywood or two over the top of it.
Neighbor's vehicle got loose and went down and ran into that. So that's planned to be fixed, but
Okay.
that's, it's just a time thing to get out here and get it done. Didn't get it in the park and it rolled down and took it out. So they patched it up as best they could at the time, and they intend to have it repaired.
I guess that's an insurance deal too, right?
I would doubt that.
Oh.
Kay, do you guys have an insurance claim against the driver of the other vehicle, or has that been taken care of?
We've been trying to figure out who went down, and we don't know. So there's no insurance on it.
There is no insurance.
We have insurance on the property, but
Not for that damage to the door?
Yeah, yeah, I don't think we'll ever figure that out.
Okay.
Well, I just know dealing with insurance always delays things a little longer than normal anyway.
And I'll just, since you might be seeing these pictures for the first time, or I don't know, maybe you did see it when the agenda was posted, but we'll just kind of walk through these a little bit. Wade went through, told you that most of the conditions arise from branches and overgrown vegetation, and then a few maintenance items on the house. So we'll just kind of walk through here. You can see in a number of spots, just in the first picture, that there is some overgrown brush. You can see on the left side of the photo there where there is the plywood or sheeting covering the garage door that you just heard about. And as you go through the pictures, once again, it's just different angles of the overgrown vegetation in parts, other angles of the door, the garage door, some of the wood piles that were around the property, and then pictures of some of the siding that would eventually need to get repaired or repainted or replaced. You see a lot of peeling paint and that kind of thing. So without going into excruciating detail, I think that kind of gives you the general idea what the conditions out there would be.
And you indicated, Wade, that some of this has been taken care of at this point?
Yes.
We looking, Pat, at just extension, or what do you?
Basically, as I indicated, Mr. Gaston has indicated there's still those piles of wood that he intends to have removed by tonight. And the Davises are looking at coming out sometime this year, but depending on how this pandemic goes, that would be something that if they can't get out here to personally deal with it, they've asked me to try and find some contractors in the local area who might be able to assist in getting resolution of those areas. So what I'm looking at here is somewhere toward the end of summer for a review, if that would work. Just to give a chance for them to get out here, number one. Number two, if they can't get out, then to get somebody hired to deal with some of these issues that they can. And they don't have any aversion to speaking with Mr. London and trying to coordinate that, and also providing Mr. Gaston with that number. And I've also talked to Mr. Gaston this morning, and he's more than willing to work with Mr. London. He does have a full-time job and would prefer to do that either on weekends or after work at 5 o'clock, but he's willing to be flexible to a degree.
Wade, is your normal, when these nuisance issues come up, is 14 days kind of the standard of the city, or do you make that judgment depending on what needs to be done?
Actually, 14 days is even most communities around here have the International Property Maintenance Code, And that's standard, 14 days for something like this.
Yeah, or do they plan on siding the other two sides of the house? I know two sides are sided already.
Glenn and David, that's the question, what's the plan about the siding?
We actually have purchased all of the siding for the house, and we have been siding it when we get back. Typically, we're doing about a side a year. I don't remember, just that was how we've been doing it.
His parents passed away and things kind of fell apart.
Yeah. Yeah, when my parents both died in the same year, and anyway, things kind of got.
Can we get a copy of the pictures so we know what they're specifically looking at?
Yes.
They are available online if you go to the city's website.
Okay. I don't,
Yeah, we plan to finish, and we'll probably have to get some help doing that. We have the material bought.
yeah. It's,
All right.
Wade, do you kind of want to walk through what your
Painting the
normal process is for one of these when there's going to be items that take longer than 14 days?
Well, normally we send out the order to correct, and then we allow them 14 days. Sometimes it takes longer than 14 days due to we send it out certified in mail. So the 14 days starts when they sign the receipt for the certified letter. And then after the 14 days is up, we'll look at the property again. If nothing's been done, we will send out another letter, more or less telling them that they need to contact our department. And then usually they will either contact us. If they don't, then it normally will wind up going to the city attorney. But normally what we do is if we see some progress, we will work with the property owners. You know, in this case, sometimes we even have them sign a nuisance agreement. We'll put a timeline together get certain dates when stuff has to be completed by.
Okay. Wade, let me ask you a question. Are we hearing this because they didn't respond right away? Is that where we're at?
Sorry, I'll jump in and take that one, Jay. So under our nuisance code, they do have the right to file an appeal, and Mr. Kiner did make that formal request. I forget what day it came in, but this was the earliest we were able to hold the hearing after that. So the individual who gets an order to correct has the right to appeal that, and that's because they made that request, that's why we're hearing it today. Not necessarily that they didn't do the work in time, or that they weren't able or weren't willing to work something out, or that the city wasn't willing to work something out. There was just the request to hold the appeal.
Okay. So in other words, if you guys can all sit down and do some, let's get together on this issue, it can go away. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think to a large part that would be the intention, Jay, is to work out some kind of timeline that works to get this stuff remediated in a timely fashion. I pulled up some of your code provisions here, since this is a new process for most of the board members. Well, actually, all the board members, even the one that was on here before. This is a different nuisance code than they would have been working on before. So when we're at this stage, we're holding the appeal. Really, your job is to determine whether the information contained in the order to correct was accurate, and whether there actually was a nuisance, and if the actions listed to correct those conditions were appropriate. So you do have the discretion to alter an order if you believe that's necessary. I guess at this time, I would just ask the board to uphold the order to correct as it was issued, confirm that there was a nuisance conditions on the property at that time, and that there were appropriate conditions listed to take care of those nuisance conditions, and then we can work informally with them on the timeline and try to come up with something that's going to be mutually agreeable. And then if they're not able to do that, we would have to find some further way to address it at that point.
I was wondering, have the Davises got any idea when they might be coming back to South Dakota?
You know, we are in, we're still having to wear masks to go to the supermarket because the pandemic is still a fairly serious problem. I'm also not sure about whether or not the states between us and South Dakota are requiring a 14-day quarantine. So we, and of course, we have both of us conditions that might make things worse if the virus hits us. So we're very concerned about that. That being said, I don't know how to tell you when the virus will be done, but I understand that at some point we will reach some sort of a condition where enough people have had it that we get what's called herd immunity, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, but because I've never lived through a pandemic before.
I think, Glenn, what he's asking you is it still your plan to come back this summer?
You know, given reasonable conditions, yes. We were planning on coming out, and we were prevented from doing so because, you know, we're not sure that it's even safe to stay in hotels right now. You know, as I say, we wear masks and gloves to go to the supermarket. Anyway, so yes, we're waiting. We're kind of waiting on the virus to become something that's more manageable, or until hopefully we won't have to wait until they come up with an immunization. I really don't want to wait that long. We are looking into the possibility of purchasing a motorhome so that we won't have to stay anywhere, but that's something that we haven't. That's something that we've been looking online and making phone calls and making appointments to see people about that. But we are concerned about our health, very concerned, because the fatality statistics on the people who get this thing are alarming. Anyway, so I'm a little unsure about the exact timing on that. As I say, we do have somebody who works for us, and we would like to be, you know, part of. We were doing parts of, you know, every time we go out to South Dakota, I call it the family workation. You know, every time we go out there, we do something for the property. So we spend probably more than half of our time actually working on it. But anyway, I'm not quite sure when we will be able to do that. I'm not even. I want to be able to do it safely, and I don't want my wife to get this illness for sure. I have hemochromatosis, and people with high ferritin levels, they say, don't fare so well with this illness. My wife is 65, and she gets asthma, and so we're concerned about, apparently the thing in this illness that kills people is something they call the cytokine storm.
Glenn, Glenn, you're willing to work with me and with Mr. London, to stay in
Yes,
touch as far as
yes.
your travel plans?
All right, that's what we needed to know.
Absolutely.
All right.
Mr. Davis, this is Larry Gersa. The work that needs to be done on the house and exterior, does that require an interior access that a contractor would have?
Yeah, actually. It does. Yes, it does require interior access because the materials for it are in the garage.
I don't know what needs to be done with the door. Garage.
Yeah. So, yes, it does require interior access. I suppose we can mail you some keys or something like that, maybe, I don't know. But the other thing is, on the siding thing, I actually used a water level to make sure that all the corners were at exactly the same height so that when we met around at the back edge, that all the corners match all the way around the house.
All right.
And I know that's probably a little bit, what do they call it? I don't have polite words for that, so I won't use those terms. But anyway, the point of it is that I'd kind of like to do it myself as much as possible because I want a certain quality that I don't seem to be able to get other people to help with.
All right, thank you. In other words, bottom line here, you're willing to work with Wade and your attorney to make sure that things happen on this in a timely
Yes,
manner?
absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we probably do not need to go further with this issue and let the attorney and the building personnel, as well as the rest of the city personnel, take care of this issue.
Okay.
Is that agreeable for everyone?
Well, the
I
only
think
thing
so.
The only thing I can think of is, I realize there are a lot of things out there that affect the time frame of this, but it would be good to discuss at least some sort of time frame, 60 days or 90 days or whatever it may be, at least say this is a projected date to get things corrected, because otherwise, you know, it's going on forever. That's one of the reasons I was asking about the access inside the house, if keys can be mailed to Mr. Kiner and things could get coordinated that way to get contractors, you know, starting on something at least. And I know it's difficult, but there may be some alternative ways we have to look at trying to keep moving forward with it. That's all.
That, frankly, was the purpose of requesting the end of summer for a continuance date, was to be able to get to that point. And as you're already aware from what Mr. London's told you and what I've told you, Mr. Gaston's been there already and done some of this. So the areas that aren't done are some wood piles, garage door, and some painting or siding issues. And with that amount of time, we can either have an update or have most of it done, as long as Mr. London and I communicate, the Davises communicate, and Mr. Gaston communicates. With that kind of a time frame, if we have, I don't know if you have a hearing in August, I certainly don't have an objection to moving it out to then.
Is that a motion that we move it to the 1st of September?
So just procedurally, I'm going to make the recommendation that you uphold the order to correct. We wouldn't have any problem, I don't think, giving them until the end of September to work through these issues, but it would eliminate the need to have to come back for a future hearing if everything is cleared up. So, and then
Give us a
if we have this hanging out there, it could potentially stop us from taking remedies beyond this step too. So I wouldn't want to see that hold up the process. So.
My only objection to that is most of the good chunk of this has already been done, so just a blanket order of holding is inappropriate. So if you want to put it in there that the garage door needs to be fixed so that you get your pound of flesh, okay.
Yeah, and I guess you're upholding it as to the conditions that existed back at that date. Obviously, the actions that they've taken since that time we acknowledge that, and I don't think there's any problem there. We can certainly acknowledge that they've mowed and that they're in the process of removing the branches, and supposedly will be done with that today.
Well, there's some major concern as far as removing dead wood, because there's a tree down in the lake on their property that has to be 3 feet thick.
There's a dispute about that particular tree. I don't know if that's on the property line or not, Joe. I don't know which one that is. Is there a picture of that?
I don't know. It's a major tree.
Yeah, that I don't know as to that particular point. I don't think that would have been,
That's not in.
that wouldn't have been contemplated under the order to correct. We might have to further address that issue, but that would.
Over the dock that's laying on shore.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
I guess that would be something we could follow up on, but it's not subject to this order to correct.
And I'll certainly cooperate and take a look at that, but there is an issue with one neighbor about a tree that is either theirs or the Davises. We don't know that, and I don't know if that's the tree that Joe's referring to. So, but we'll certainly, we'll take a look at it.
All right, what do you need from us then? A motion?
Yeah, I would just request a motion to uphold the order to correct, and you can acknowledge that they've mowed and removed some of the dead vegetation.
Okay,
I'll make that motion, exactly what Justin
do I hear a second?
said. Second.
Moved and seconded that we acknowledge the motion and recognize fact that things are being done. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. Let's go roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda.
Hang on, we still got to get the part in there about September for the delay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'd make a motion that Mr. Kreiner and Mr. London sit down and come to an agreement that September 1, most of these issues are going to be corrected so that we don't get into the winter and they can't be corrected.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded that we direct staff to look at this issue and to make some kind of an agreement and see progress by September 1. That's what I heard. Is that the motion that everybody heard?
Just, I guess I would ask, are you expecting things to be done at that time, or for significant progress to be made? Just a little bit more clarification on that.
I think significant progress is what I heard. Is that what I heard?
Especially the yard being cleaned up.
You know, we still have to remember, we're trying to appease a neighbor or someone who has an issue.
And
So we have to show some work here.
and
I don't know.
I guess one other thing, I just have you recall that typically when we're dealing with these issues, we're still willing to work with people past those deadlines that get set. So even if you set that as a final deadline, we'd still have the ability to work past that date and extend it out as long as they're showing that progress. So that's my concern with leaving it open-ended versus saying that's the deadline.
And basically, that's what I heard Skip's motion to be, is that we want to know for sure by September 1 that there's being progress being made and that you can see an end point. Isn't that the way you were talking about it, Doug?
Yes.
Right. That's what I heard.
Because with the pandemic and everything else it affects, it's hard to determine schedules of. Yeah.
But by September 1st, you better see something that's pretty substantial.
Well, especially the yard.
Yeah.
As far as the siding of the house, if he wants to do it himself,
You guys agree?
Get it
That's
worked
what-
out.
Well, I'm still going to go back to the point where, you know, we can say that we want to see substantial progress by that date, but even that is a little bit open to interpretation and that kind of stuff. So I guess my request would be set September 1st as the final date, and if we need to extend it out past that date and they're showing the work, then we're still going to be willing to cooperate with that.
Just so it's all clear, I think the definition of substantial progress has already been met as part of the yard work, but that's just picking nits.
Well,
Well, I
having-
just believe that by September 1st, most of the yard work, or all the work, yard work will be done.
I think that's fair. We're gonna remove the tree branches tonight, so.
Well, having worked with engineers for years, a substantial completion means that everything is pretty much done except some final cleanup that can be agreed to.
That wasn't the word. Substantial completion is different than substantial progress.
Yep, I agree. But I believe that substantial progress means that we would expect to see almost everything complete.
Yeah. And, you know, we're having this conversation now, so I think it kind of can show you the dangers in doing that. So once again, my recommendation is just to set September 1st as the date that this stuff needs to be done, and if we need to extend it out past that, staff can do that.
Do we have to come together to extend it out again?
No.
All right, the motion was September 1, pretty hard deadline. That's what I heard. Are we all in agreement? Yep. You got your answer, Pat?
Yep.
Justin, you got your answer?
All right, we'll treat it as the final deadline.
Okay. Subject to extension if you guys think it has to be.
Yep.
That's what we want. All right, let's go on to the next item. Do you have any other questions, Mr. and Mrs. Davis?
Jay,
I don't think so.
Okay?
Unless you have something to say.
And I assume we can hang up when we finish this?
Yes, you sure can, unless you want to hear what else we got to do.
Jay, I was just
No, we
going to,
don't have anything else.
All
Hey,
right.
and Glenn, I'll call you, probably not today, I plan to go golfing with my son, but, sometime tomorrow.
Yeah.
Jay,
All
just
righty, thank you.
one,
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
Still me.
Thank you all.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
since we had the discussion on the deadline after the last motion, I'm wondering if we should just do a new motion as to the deadline and have another vote on that, just to solidify it.
This is why I hate to have her turning stuff to us for a half an hour.
I will make the motion that as of September 1, the project should be completed. If not, they will sit down with the folks in the city and make arrangements to get it done.
I suggest that Wayne and Pat communicate quite often what's being done.
Is that a second?
Yes.
Moved and seconded that we set September 1st as the deadline. Are you happy, Justin?
I'm about to be.
Okay. Is there discussion, further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, let's go on to the next item. The hearing and action are in relation to Curtis Lee Burlington. Did I pronounce that right, Kurt?
Bullington,
Bullington, all right.
you can move up by one of the microphones, Kurt.
Wade, tell us what's going on here.
Well, this also comes as a complaint, let's see, May 5th, went to the property of 721 North Dove. And, took some pictures again, some overgrown vegetation in the front.
Computer went to sleep, so now I can't pull up pictures.
Mine went to sleep the other day and I couldn't get the agenda and other information back either, so.
I did print the pictures if you want to see them.
Yeah, let's see.
There's several there. Okay.
Go ahead, Wade.
All right. Okay, as I was saying before, on May 5th, I went by, took some pictures of some overgrown vegetation.
The lake.
Looked like some building material in the backyard along with some overgrown vegetation also. Some appliances, old tires, unlicensed vehicles. I think there's even one that I took a picture that's wrecked. No lumber. And once again, I went by the place before the meeting also. Some stuff has been cleaned up. One of the buildings in the back has a new roof on it that is on here as far as failure to maintain exterior. But there are still vehicles that are unlicensed, and lumber and tires still laying around the property.
So I'm clear on this order to correct, are we dealing solely with 721, the property owned by Mr. Bullington?
Yes.
You're not dealing with the city-owned property next door?
Well, we'd be dealing with both, Pat, because there's materials that spill onto the other area as well.
How do you come about citing him for a nuisance that's property owned by you?
I can get to that here. Just give me a second. So you can see, well, maybe you can't. I'll just have to zoom in here a ways. So if you look under our definition of property agent, it's listed as the owner, occupant, and/or person in charge of any house, building, lot, or premises. And if you look, trying to find the specific area now. So unlawful for any property agent to create, maintain, commit, or permit to be created, maintain, or committed any public nuisances. So it may not be on his property. There may be a cloud on who actually owns the lot to the north, but I think it's undisputed that it's Mr. Bullington's materials, and he's the one that's actually creating and maintaining the nuisance.
I'm not disputing that he's basically had occupancy of that property for 30, 40 years, but it's owned by you, by the city.
I don't know that. My review of the title records, I believe that the city may have title by adverse possession, but there's certainly no title records that say that the city's the owner.
So do I own that property? Because you guys.
Hang
are
on,
giving
Kurt,
me
Kurt,
nuisance.
Kurt, let me finish, and then I'll get back to you, okay? All right? this is and just so that Mr. Johnson and I'll go into this. This has been pending for a long time. Curtis has been trying to get the city to act on this property for several years. I've had discussions with Mr. Johnson wanting that property to be either divided or a quiet title action prepared. It's been surveyed by Smucker, Paul, and Knorr, and indications from the title company is that the city of Mitchell owns it after that most of that property was abandoned by the railroad, 8th Street, basically. Mr. Bullington's been before this board one other time, or before the city one other time, on a notice to correct on specifically that property owned by the city. And he's incurred an expense of about $2,500 to have trees removed, stumps, those kinds of things, and he did that, and Mr. Robinson was the one that he paid to have that done. And that was still property owned by the city, so he's incurred that expense on a prior occasion. We're willing to buy the property. I've had agents go out and take a look at it and see what it might be worth. His property is assessed at $29,550 or something similar to that. That's 2 lots. So about $14,000 a lot. What he would be getting in this whole situation is half of that 1 lot. We're looking at $5,000 to $7,000 maybe in value. He's already spent $2,500 to have those tree stumps removed, and would like to comply with getting all of these other things done. And I'll get to what he's going to do as far as the nuisance. But all of this is tied up in the fact that it is still going to have to be decided who owns that property. And in discussions with Mr. Johnson, the city is indicating they still want to maintain ownership of a right-of-way through the middle of that property. We've also had discussions. Mr. Johnson has contacted the owners to the north of that right-of-way and talked to them about possibly wanting to be participating in owning that part of that lot. That's the complication in all of this. He can't do a lot in getting this remediated without a determination of who owns this particular piece of property. He can still get rid of the vehicles that are not operable and don't have current plates. He's going to agree to do that. He's going to clean up and has already started, as Mr. London has indicated, getting rid of some of these things, these lumber pallets and plastic and pegboards and all of those things, and getting some shelving and cabinets done, and getting the vegetation cut down. Already a new roof has been indicated, but the problem becomes without knowing the ownership of that other piece of property, a quiet title action, or simply a quitclaim deed from the city is no issue. Because if they don't own it, and they give us a quitclaim deed, they're not transferring anything. They're not warranting that they own the property. But at that point, he could start his adverse possession action much the same as he's done by living there and being on that property for those number of years. And then it would be the responsibility of the city to participate in any quiet title action. We do not have a problem, Curtis, with meeting with Mr. London and no more yelling and screaming and cursing and coming up with a plan and a timeline to get these pallets and everything out of there. But the bottom line is still has to be what's going on with that other piece of property where this nuisance is, according to the city, and we agree that it is a mess. But that's got to be done, and we're asking for a quitclaim deed to that property. And I've got it's been surveyed, and I've got the legal description. The city signs a quitclaim deed to it, or we'll buy it at a couple $1,000, and we can get a fair appraisal done by any realtor that you select. But what I'm telling you is that's what about the value is. So that's our suggestion is, again, Mr. Bullington is willing to work with Mr. London, and he has already made some progress in getting those things done, but the weather has been a hindrance to some degree, but he needs some clarification on his ownership rights, and also wants to maintain that claim to be reimbursed for what he did when he didn't have to do it. That's the substance of where we're at. Right, Kurt?
Right. So the city property, you have things stored on the city property right now, that your
Whose property is it?
well, I'm just saying obviously it's not
I
yours.
mean, if you're giving me nuisance letters on that property, it should be mine.
Well, I guess my whole question is, if the city owns the property and there's stuff on the property.
And I'm using it,
Well,
I don't
know.
need to use it.
I'm just saying, if
It's
there's
there.
stuff on the property, either the city takes it off or you take it off. It's not that complicated to me. If the city owns it, I guess it's.
I got 3 vehicles, take them off.
Okay, maybe that's a solution. Maybe the city hauls off the vehicles off their property and then you clean the stuff on your property. Because,
Wow. All I want is that property.
well,
Is it mine or yours?
well, I know, but it's the city, you know, it's like.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
takes
a
forever.
free deal.
How long has this been going on with this property? How many?
And
Years. And I can tell you that back
That's
in,
let me tell you, I lived there 33 years, I got like 3 nuisance deal, we cleaned up cement barriers, we cleaned up a lot of rocks, trees. For 33 years, I didn't know what the property, whose it was, until I tried to get a permit to put a fence. And then I found out nobody owns it.
it's not on the tax rolls.
The city doesn't own it anymore?
There's nothing on the tax rolls, and what I can tell you is back in
Oh, okay.
1986, but according to but to answer that question, Larry, yes, the city does own it according to the most recent title opinion that one of the abstract companies did when we did the survey with Smucker Paul. Back in 1986, I got a letter from Lee Anderson given to Kurt Bullington. And that disputed land in 1986 is still listed here as being undecided. And they thought it was, Mr. Anderson at that time thought that L.L. Bain and Company might own it, the railroad might still own it, and it sat from all of those years with him having, use of it. But it's in this letter that it contains all of that area that even in 1986 it wasn't decided. So, and I don't know who did the survey. Kurt, did you pay for the survey? For
I
Smucker
was
Paul?
working on it and then
No,
the
no,
city took over.
No, did you pay for Smucker Paul?
No, I didn't give them any.
City did the
money.
survey.
I was working on it.
So that's when the actual boundaries of this property, and this is a picture of it. Back in, that was done and certified by Smucker Paul Kifke, August 17th of 2018. And that's about the same time that the title company came in and said that it basically is reverted to the city. So, and Justin and I started working fairly close to that amount of time on whether we needed a quiet title action or how we were going to get that done. I told him about the expenses that Curtis has been paying, and we talked about, he does not recall that we talked about the fact that he'd have to be reimbursed for those expenses if in fact it was city land. So it's been boiling a long time. Now that doesn't excuse the fact that Kurt's got some mess there that he's gonna clean up. But he's frustrated that he doesn't know if that's his land or if it's the city's land. And like I said, if the city doesn't want to claim it,
Basically, what I see you doing here is you're looking at a piece of land that was granted to the railroad along section line back in the 18 whatever,
correct.
and it's never been resolved.
No. Well, I shouldn't say that. For a long time, the railroad ran through there.
Yeah.
And I still see pictures from Ron Fuchs showing the depot on 8th and Main in the early 60s or middle 60s, but I don't remember when exactly that. But
Well,
all of that got
out here in the city parking lot, right over here, there was an elevator there at one time.
so. Yeah, that when they abandoned it, I mean that's contained in that letter from Lee Anderson, I mean, there's some information in there about that, but that's the substance of this dispute. I mean, Kurt's got some cleaning to do and getting vehicles out of there. He's agreed to do. Take them to the junkyard. They're worth, $5-10. They're not giving salvage value.
So is there, just a question, just a great question. So is there any kind of law or legal something that, like, you're using a property, it's like, nobody declares ownership, but you use it for 30 or 40 years or whatever it is, can it just become yours because you're the one using it, nobody else is?
Yep, yes and no, yes and no. Adverse possession is the law.
Yep.
However, it does not apply to governmental use.
Me, what, question, and probably for you guys, what is the order to get rid of a piece of city-owned property? How does that work? Is it not advertised, or how do we get rid of?
Yeah, I mean, there's several different ways. Typically, with something like this, it would probably be the city would declare it surplus, and we would seek sealed bids, or it could go to auction, and that's typically how it would get disposed. There's some other ways that it can be done, but to even get to that point right now, we need to figure out the title situation. The city appears to have title, but we can't really say that for sure because there's a cloud on the title. The chain's not clear. So
And another kind of a legal question. If it's undetermined of who owns the property, and we know basically whose stuff is on it, legally, if we don't know who owns it, then who can get rid of it? I mean, the city can't go on to a property technically they don't own, or if they do own, can the city just go on the property and just throw everything away?
not quite that easily, but yes, I mean, we do have the ability to declare it a nuisance, and if it's not abated, we can abate that nuisance. But, I mean, it gets complicated. You need to make sure that the proper parties are notified and different things like that. I think that's part of the reason why this is such a complicated issue in dealing with this particular property is a lot of that background information is unclear. Doesn't mean it can't be addressed. I mean, it's still a nuisance. The city has the authority to address nuisances.
So does the city want the land or not?
I don't think that we have any use for it. I would think that we would probably get rid of it. We just want to maintain the right-of-way. If you I'll go back here. So if you go back here to this overview, I don't know if you'll be able to see my mouse on here or not, but this is the alley that we're talking about. It kind of goes through the middle of this no man's land. It actually just shows up as right-of-way if you look at these records. But the title records don't have it showing as right-of-way. It's various private lots and I guess land that didn't necessarily get included in a plat. Or it's a massive mess in this particular area.
Sort of behind Subway.
Correct. So the alley comes off of Duff here. It circles to go north, back behind Subway, and goes up to the end of the block where it meets up with 9th. So the city would want to maintain the alley. We have no interest in maintaining the rest of it. If you look over on the north side here, I mean, there's also problems here where the north neighbors have been using some of this. And, you know, they're kind of in the same situation where Curtis is. You know, he's been using this forever. The ownership situation is a mess, but that's really not what we're discussing here today. We're discussing whether or not it's a nuisance.
You know, I think Pat's idea here a little bit ago of a quick paying deed if the city doesn't think they want it, with that defined as the alley, might be in order if Curtis gets the junk out of there, all of it, whether it's city's or his property that it's on. That might be the deal to make.
You mean I
No,
can have
no.
that property?
Hang
and
on.
I get all that stuff off?
Hang on, that's what he's talking.
That's
That
what
is
I'm
not-
thinking
that-
would be the deal.
That's not what has been decided. It's a discussion. And that's what I've asked them to do, okay? But it's not decided. And that is exactly what I'm requesting is that, and then there's no doubt that's his responsibility to get it cleaned up. That if it's his property, and I think he has every right at that point to bring forward an action for adverse possession and get absolute ownership of that property, because he's had it for long enough, more than 23 years. So, but with the city out of it, then I don't think there's an issue.
Now,
Because-
let's go back a second, so we're talking about wanting to leave that alley there. Is that correct?
That's right away, I can't, I'm not supposed to do nothing with it.
And he's not objecting to the.
He's not objecting
No.
to that.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, the alley stays there.
Yeah. Although, I don't know if you've ever driven it like I have. It's sketchy at best to be used as a right-of-way.
But it could be defined in,
Oh, absolutely.
Garbage truck down there.
Yeah, having the access is important. We're not intending it for it to see a lot of use.
Yeah.
But having it there is important.
and
So,
I
I mean,
think that's
the-
the kind of a deal we ought to be striking myself.
And that kind of a resolution is, outside of the authority of this board to
But we can sure
demand
make
or
a
suggest,
recommendation.
but you can certainly make that recommendation.
And I don't have an objection to the nuisance being declared. Okay? Curtis, you understand that?
Yeah, I understand,
And you understand that you're gonna have to clean that up
yes.
on not only your property at 721, but right up to the alleyway.
Yes,
And you're willing to do that.
I'm more than willing.
How much time is it gonna take you?
Give me a month at least, well, a couple weeks.
No, I want 30 days. Sometimes you're pretty slow.
Yes, I know, so, 30 days.
In the meantime, why don't you guys at the city staff sit down with a couple of the folks at council and say, hey, one way to get out of this thing in a reasonable manner, as suggested by a reasonable board, is to give this man a quick claim deed for anything except that alley, and see how that flies.
Well, what would you do with the north part? The other
The-
side of that?
yeah, the other side of the alley?
You can put that up, Raj.
Who has that, or who lives next to that? Or is he-
Gary and Laura Huska's using it.
Do they live in that house?
Are they interested in having the north house?
I was
So-
thinking you auction that part off.
Yeah, what I'll say is, I've made the suggestion multiple times over the years, is that we, all three of us join in, quiet title action, get the situation resolved so we know who owns what, and then if the city needs to transfer any property from there, it's a lot cleaner to be able to do that. I've made that suggestion a lot because this has been a back burner project for me that I've never been able to get around to. And I've even suggested that if we wanted to pursue that, we could have an attorney, Mr. Kiner, or some other attorney handle that quiet title action, and the city could even throw a little bit of money at it to cost share on that. But I understand that
You're not
Mr.
having
Kiner
any
is not interested or has not been interested in that action up to this point, and Mr. Bullington's expressed reluctance on being able to pay for that, so.
And it costs the city nothing to do a quit claim deed. They're giving away only what interest they have in the claim. And then it's up to him to do a quiet title action if he needs to. At no expense to the city.
The city decides to continue maintaining it, he wants his $2,200 back, or?
Well, at that point, if he's willing to live without the 2,200, he's lived without it, but that's only on condition that,
I really want that property.
that's what he wants, is the property.
I don't want you guys to do it. If I could just have that property, it'd make it a lot easier on me.
It's gotta be cleaned up one way or the other.
Well,
Yep.
it's gonna make it a lot easier for people to decide when it starts getting cleaned up or continues.
Okay.
So we
That's
can,
a no-brainer for them.
we can sure have the discussions with the mayor and council members as to what we want to pursue on quick claim or quiet title or any of that. As far as the hearing goes today, you know, the issue is it a nuisance and when should it be cleaned up if it is?
Okay. I think it's pretty easy for us to determine that it is a nuisance. And that it should be cleaned up. And I think we should give the man at least 30 days, maybe even 45, given the conditions that we are under. And in the meantime, we'll revisit this at that time, which gives Justin and Wade time to visit with the council. But our recommendation would be to get that thing cleaned up with a quiet title or a quit claim deed or something for both sides of the alley. Is that not what everybody is thinking that's sitting around this table at this time?
Well, I just wonder if the city sits there and says, we'll give the south half, the quick claim deed, to give the south half, and the people in the north half don't want the rest of that property.
And
Does the city
pre-
now lay claim to it again?
Previous discussions that I've had with the Hauskas, they were interested. They just weren't interested in joining the quiet. And actually, I shouldn't say that. We never really got to the point of pursuing the quiet title with an outside party. So, but they were interested in taking over that. Obviously, they've used it just as much as Curtis has used the south part. So, I think they're in the same situation.
I certainly think it would be smart for the city to simply quit claim half to Kurt, half to the Huskas, retain the right-of-way, and be done with it. And then it's up, then you're clean.
Then we don't need another park.
The city's clean. Everything then falls on the people that, to do what they want to do.
All right, let's
I agree on this.
let's have a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion the property is a nuisance and I'm good with 45 days to clean it up because of our pandemic issues, the extra few days won't hurt anything.
How about we make it simple for July 15th?
July 15th?
That make you guys happy, Pat?
Absolutely.
Justin?
Did we get a second?
Second.
All right, there we go. Once we have the vote, we'll be happy.
Now, I think as a caveat to that and discussion on that, on the motion, is that we make sure that city staff understands that we are looking forward to seeing this issue of title resolved. And they should proceed to do that as best they can. In the meantime, we'll talk to the people that we can talk to as far as the council from the other side of that door. Is that not an agreeable idea for all of us sitting here?
Is it tough to get something on the council's agenda to that effect, Justin?
I guess I don't really, without having those preliminary discussions, I'm hesitant to give you an answer on that. If that's the course that the mayor and elected officials want to go, then I don't think it would be difficult to follow through with that process.
And I've already talked, just because it's a relative, I've talked to Ralph about getting some kind of a feel, like I told you in the initial discussion, about the value, and he looked up the assessed values of Curtis's lots, the surrounding lots, and basically with the alley, the right-of-way taken out of there, I don't think that the opinion, especially in that area of town, that it's going to be a problem in getting some type of a value in that range to be given to the city to consider. Why would we want to keep this when it's not on the tax rolls, it's not doing anything anyway? But if necessary, I'll certainly have some type of a proposal or a assessment from that realtor or any other realtor that the city wants to consider.
At least you put it back in tax rolls for Curtis is gonna be paid tax.
Yep.
And you know, I think in fairness to Curtis, he's got some money invested in that lot over the years. I don't know if the neighbors to the north do or not, but I don't think that's a big issue if it gets cleaned up and they take care of it and it's not on the tax rolls today. That's my opinion. All right, we are ready to vote. Is there further discussion on this motion? Hearing none? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Anything else to discuss?
No, sir.
We are adjourned.
Curtis, what's the end date?
Oh, July 15th,
And that means you clean up where?
my lot in the.
And the city.
Property.
The city's lot.
And I don't want you to
Or
wait,
whoever
I don't
the hell
want you
owns
waiting to
it.
the end either.
And then stop at my house and mow the lawn.
Okay,
Okay?
okay,
You call me if you get sick or break a leg, okay?
okay.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Pat, haven't
Thanks,
seen you
Pat.
forever and a day, but how are you doing?
Good. I'm just staying above ground, that's all I can do.
That's